I saw blood on my hands and thought, oh my God, what have I done? But before panic could set in, I realized it was just beet juice spilled by Eleanor Harper when I caught her red-handed, dumping weed killer all over my harvest. If you've ever had that one neighbor who seems to think your land, your peace of mind, and your hard work are their personal playground to destroy, then you'll understand this story. Because Eleanor, the self-declared president of the neighborhood, hadn't just crossed the line. She sprinted over it. And now, thanks to locking her in my root cellar when I caught her in the act, I'm staring down the barrel of a $2 million lawsuit. But let me back up. My name is Ethan Marshall. Until a few years ago, I was living the city life in Austin, Texas, a senior software developer, overpriced condo, and a work schedule that made me forget what actual sunlight looked like. When my grandfather passed, he left me his 5-acre farm out in rural Wisconsin. I'd spent summers there as a kid, and the place had always felt like home. So, I sold the condo, negotiated remote work, and traded in my city hustle for a quieter life where I could balance coding with farming. It was the best decision I ever made. Or so I thought. The farmhouse was a sturdy 2-story built in the 1930s. A greenhouse my grandfather constructed himself. A weathered chicken coop. And tucked into the side of a gentle hill, the root cellar, a perfectly engineered 200 square feet of cool, stable storage space. My grandfather had rigged it with shelves, lighting, and even a composting toilet just in case. Just in case became very relevant. The first half year was bliss. My nearest neighbors, the Simpson sweet retired couple, brought over pies and jars of jam. I settled into a rhythm of work, garden, and restoration. Peaceful. Productive. Then Eleanor Harper bought the modern glass box of a house that had been built on the property next door. 52, designer everything, and the permanent pout of someone who was used to having her way. She was the founder of a luxury home decor brand and had escaped to the countryside for serenity, or at least her version of it. Chickens, gardens, and people like me apparently didn't fit into her curated aesthetic. Our first conversation? She walked right up to my fence, sunglasses pushed up into her platinum hair, and informed me, "Your chickens are noisy. Some of us appreciate peace and quiet." I explained politely that my hens weren't noisy. No roosters. She stared at me like I'd suggested building a roller coaster in my backyard and walked away without another word. It only got worse from there. Suddenly, I started getting code violation notices about my chicken coop, my compost pile, the height of my tomato stakes. Each complaint got dismissed, but the pattern was obvious. When the red tape didn't work, Eleanor pivoted to social games. Lavish neighborhood parties to which I was never invited. Rumors whispered at farmers markets about how my hobby farm was lowering property values. Then one afternoon, a real estate agent showed up at my door with a lowball offer for my place, 40% of its appraised value. I didn't need a flowchart to figure out who was behind that. So I installed security cameras. Didn't take long before they started paying off. One night, I caught footage of Eleanor creeping along the fence line near my chicken coop, releasing something small from a cage. Next morning, evidence of a predator, fox or raccoon, maybe, but my hens were safe thanks to the reinforced coop. I brought the footage to the local sheriff, Alan Drummond, a grizzled, no-nonsense man who'd served the county longer than I'd been alive. "I'll have a word with her," he said. "But it's not enough for charges." It wasn't enough to stop her either. Over the next few weeks, my garden hoses were mysteriously slashed. Trash scattered across my driveway. And once I found strange powder dusted along the border of my vegetable beds. I scrubbed it away, terrified it was something toxic. Still, no direct proof. So I upgraded my security. Silent alarms. More cameras. And I rigged the root cellar with an electronic lock, one I could control from my phone. That was the smartest move I ever made. Because the harassment escalated again. This time, Eleanor started spreading a new rumor. I was growing illegal plants down in the cellar. Sheriff Drummond came by, visibly embarrassed, to investigate. "I'm sorry, Ethan," he said after inspecting the shelves of potatoes, carrots, beets, and jars of pickles. "But you know how small towns are. The rumor might have been baseless, but it did its damage. People in town started giving me suspicious looks. Whispers at the feed store. Cold shoulders at the hardware shop. Then came the night everything changed. It was late October, and I was wrapping up a coding project when my phone buzzed with an alert. I checked the camera feed, and there she was. Eleanor Harper. Picking the lock on my cellar door. canvas tote slung over her shoulder. She slipped inside. Through the camera's night vision, I saw her pull out a bottle of commercial-grade weed killer and start pacing the cellar, looking for where to begin spraying. I froze. My hand hovered over the phone, finger on the lock button. Was I really about to trap my neighbor? Was this the right call? But then I thought about the months of harassment, the slashed hoses, the poisoned garden edge, the lies. And now this. I pressed the button. The lock clicked shut. Eleanor spun around at the sound, yanking at the door handle. When it wouldn't budge, she started pounding and screaming. I called Sheriff Drummond. She's fine, I told him. The cellar's heated, ventilated, there's even a toilet. But I caught her red-handed. You'll want to see the footage. Drummond groaned. I'm 40 minutes out dealing with a crash. Hold tight. Don't engage her. I watched the camera feed while she raged, screaming threats, flipping between panic and fury. She made a call probably to her husband, Nathaniel Harper, one of the state's highest-paid corporate lawyers. Sure enough, 30 minutes later, Nathaniel's sleek black BMW rolled up my driveway. He stepped out, calm, sharp suit gleaming even under the porch light. Where is my wife? He demanded, all authority and condescension. In the cellar, I replied. Breaking into my property, caught on camera with a bottle of weed killer. I showed him the footage. His jaw tightened. His eyes narrowed. But he stayed composed. Regardless of what your video shows, you've committed false imprisonment. I'll see you in court. The sheriff's on his way, I said. Feel free to wait inside. Coffee? He declined, but stepped inside to avoid the cold. We sat in silence, watching Eleanor on the monitor. At one point, she poured the weed killer down the cellar's floor drain, clearly trying to hide the evidence. What she didn't know, that drain emptied into a separate containment tank my grandfather had installed, designed for soil runoff testing. Every drop was collected. When Sheriff Drummond arrived, we reviewed the footage together. I handed over the logs of every previous incident, the rumors, the property damage, all neatly compiled. Drummond sighed, rubbing his temples. Mr. Harper, he said, turning to Nathaniel. Your wife's got herself in a serious mess. Nathaniel tried to posture, but it was weak. We can settle this quietly, he offered. There's no need for escalation. But I was done playing nice. Full compensation for damages, I said. A binding agreement that Eleanor stays off my property permanently. And an explanation because this isn't just about chickens and aesthetics. What's she really trying to hide? Nathaniel's poker face slipped. I saw the twitch at the corner of his eye, the tightening of his jaw. Sheriff Drummond nodded slowly. Let's go talk to her. We unlocked the cellar. Eleanor burst out, spitting threats, playing the victim. I was just checking on the property. The door was ajar. I was worried about animals getting trapped. We have you on video, Drummond said, unimpressed. Picking the lock. Carrying chemicals. Pouring it out. He gestured to the weed killer bottle still visible on the footage. Eleanor's bravado flickered. Nathaniel grabbed her arm before she could speak again. Don't say another word, he warned. But it was too late. The investigation was rolling. And when the testing came back from my containment tank, proof of toxic waste. The chemical matched industrial-grade herbicides once used by a company Nathaniel's father had owned, Harper Environmental Services. Dumped illegally on what was now my land decades ago. Eleanor's campaign to drive me off the property had been a cover-up. If I'd discovered the contamination, the liability would have been massive. Instead, thanks to her own arrogance, everything came to light. Charges. Lawsuits. EPA investigations. My root cellar had been the battleground. But my landme grandfather's legacy was the true victim. The story of what happened next. That's a longer tale. But let's just say, when you mess with a man's home, his work, his family's name, you'd better be ready for the fight he brings back.